Hi, my name is Mattia Murray, and welcome to The Longer Road. You are on the longer road if you have multiple intersectional identities that are often marginalized. You've had to work harder to get to the starting line, and you might feel behind. I'm here to provide hope, support, and practical tips, and to let you know that you're not alone. Welcome to part 2 of how trauma blocks money and how to change your brain states for ideas, action, and receiving to help you make more money. Okay, final topic, receiving. Depending on the type of trauma you've experienced personally, it can get in the way of receiving in multiple ways. And one of the main ones I see is basically some version of I'm not worthy to receive. And I think this is especially common for people with multiply marginalized identities because we are often taught to believe that we don't deserve to be taken care of, to have our needs met, to make money just for showing up. We're taught that we have to be the best and work to a point that is unhealthy. And if you'd like to hear more about my background on this topic, in episode 11, titled Fear of Loss, I talk about my own experience with wage theft and a financially abusive relationship. So that's my own background of part of where this comes from. But even as a small child, as a very small example, I was an extremely entrepreneurial child. And I've thought a lot about how if I'd been raised as a boy, my parents probably would have been very proud of me and encouraging my desire to sell and create things and create businesses. And they did that actually with my brother a little bit. But with me, by the time I was 10, my parents had a rule that I was not allowed to sell anything without their prior permission. And honestly, given the weird stuff I was trying to do, I'm not super upset about that. I'm just noticing that from a very young age, my desire to put myself out there and be open, I had no shame about it at the time. And as an adult, I've really had to relearn how to put myself out there, how to make offers, how to sell, and then also how to receive when people actually do want to pay me. And it's funny because something I've heard said in the business world is make it easy for people to pay you, easy ways for people to find your products if you have products, etc. And I recently had a one-on-one session with an amazing coach, and it was just a one-off session. And he did not send me the information for payment ahead of time. At the end of the session, I was like, how do I pay you? And he gave me his email for PayPal, but then I had to go back to his website and just double check the rate because I actually wasn't sure. And for me, I was just like, oh, okay, this is exactly what people mean. I want to pay him. I loved the session. I would love to come back and work with him again at some point. It was fantastic, and I was very happy with it. And it was kind of hard to figure out how to pay him. And I'm, by the way, not saying that that has anything to do with his, ability to receive or whatever. And so I'm not naming him because honestly, this is just something I noticed that kind of cemented in a lesson for me. But I definitely see multiple areas where trauma and especially fear of rejection, fear that we're not enough, and then also sometimes the kind of extreme end of self-reliance and taking care of ourselves can be another aspect of it, where maybe we want help, but we're not asking for it. Or when we ask for help, we feel like we can't get it for whatever reason. And especially if you feel like you've been relying on the same people for a long time, sometimes it can feel like it's hard to go to them because we just don't have those large networks. We don't have those villages, at least in the American culture that I grew up in white American culture. And then one of the kind of positive sides of, I think, how this can show up, how trauma can show up in trouble receiving, is that for me, I want to help people, right? People who have experienced any of the same backgrounds as me or experiences as me who are having a hard time. I want to help. So there's definitely a part of me that would be comfortable if I literally never charged anyone for anything and did all my work for free for the rest of my life, which is obviously not sustainable. But that part of me that struggled for so long, I just want to help people. And I have so much information. I have so much healing knowledge. I've done so many different modalities. I feel like even if I'm just sending someone on to work with someone else, I just have this body of knowledge and I want to share it. And for example, when I started my current coaching business, I was coaching for free, and that was for practice. So that made sense. But that transition to charging was so difficult for me. And I could feel that it was tied in with that same issue around receiving. And this kind of feels like the one that might be the most different for different people based on your experience. And something that I think can be really interesting to notice is even if your first instinct is, no, I have no trouble around this. I want people to help me. I ask for help all the time. I rely on other people. It can be useful to kind of question how that actually feels. Because just because we're accustomed to it and we allow it doesn't mean that it feels great. And I do think there are a lot of societal messages around self-sufficiency and sort of puritanical values that try to make us feel guilty for receiving, even for receiving gifts in some sense. So certainly receiving consistent support and not bootstrapping ourselves. I think there are a lot of societal messages discouraging that. So this is another one where asking yourself a sort of open-ended question and just writing down some answers can be interesting, or recording answers if you're doing audio. The question could be, if it were easy for me to receive, if I loved receiving, I would ... and then just keep writing. Just write down 5. I usually try to write at least 5 answers, maybe 10, kind of see what comes out. And the way that people practice getting better at receiving, one of the main ones I've heard in various forms in different settings is learning to accept compliments, which was so hard for me, even though I desperately wanted them. The part of me that wanted to be accepted and loved wanted compliments. Absolutely, I wanted them. But then when they came, I became very uncomfortable and kind of pushed them away or minimized them. So this is a thing you can do if you want to get better at receiving, is when people give you compliments. One way is just saying thank you. Another coach I've heard has people say, really? When they receive a compliment, because then people double down. And I have not actually tried that yet, but I thought that was a fun idea. One practice I've actually been doing for a long time, and I don't remember if I mentioned this in episode 11, is something from author Tosha Silver. And it's an affirmation, which is, it's easy for me to receive. And that was something I put up on my wall. I wrote down. I really sat with that idea. And she says if that's feeling inaccessible for you at the moment, her alternate is, and again, she uses the word God very broadly to mean whatever you want it to mean. Insert any other word, but she says something like, by the grace of God, it is suddenly easy for me to receive, or something like, despite everything, it's suddenly easy for me to receive. So that's sort of working with that possibly demand avoidance, or, that part of the brain that doesn't really believe you, which is, one of the problems with affirmations in general is when you say them and your brain just doesn't believe you. But I found working with that affirmation for a really long time, like a period of 2 years, that it's easy for me to receive, really did help start to shift some things for me. And then if you really want to go for it, you can look up something called rejection therapy, which is when people intentionally try to get rejections to get over their fear of rejections. And I have not done this. I don't necessarily recommend it. I typically don't recommend it to clients who have, for example, rejection sensitive dysphoria. Maybe it would be useful, but I have personally found that with trauma and observed in other people that putting yourself out there in a way, as Linda Tai would put it, and I don't know if this is her language originally, we want to stretch our nervous system, but not snap it. So we don't want to do something that's going to put you actually into fight, flight, freeze, etc. But stretching a little bit is okay. Stretching your comfort, doing just a little bit more. So maybe not full rejection therapy where people are going out and asking strangers for things with the intention of being rejected, but maybe really small things, asking people you know and trust, or even letting people in your life know, hey, I am intentionally kind of reaching out and doing this a little bit more. And the way I have done this practice a little bit is last year I had a rejection quota for my creative pursuits. So for poetry and composition, and then also coaching clients. So if I had a consult or if I made a direct offer to someone based on a conversation, my goal was to get 100 total rejections across all the things I did in the year. And it made me put myself out there so much more than I would have. So it wasn't quite the same as traditional rejection therapy, how most people probably do it, but it absolutely changed my perspective around rejections. And every time a rejection came in, I would actually be kind of excited because I got to check something off my little list that I had on my wall. And I used a rainbow pencil every time that had multiple colors in it, so I never knew what it was going to look like. I made it fun for myself. And some of the results that came out of that, even though I did get a lot of rejections, I also got my first poetry journal publication, which was very exciting. So one of the upsides of leaning into rejection is that inevitably there are some yeses. And then also, I was able to grow my business enough that I left my full-time job as well during that time. So that worked out well. Another practice around the emotional side of receiving is having a conversation with the different parts of yourself. So if you know internal family systems, you may have already done parts work or intentionally had conversations. But even if you haven't, this is very accessible work. The idea is some part of you is talking to some other part of you. And if it's useful, you can create characters, you can create names, you can sort of use your imagination to go as deep into this as you like. I also will sometimes do it as a journal exercise where I write with my right hand. I ask a question because I'm right-handed, and then I have my left hand write the answer. And I guess this works for me because I'm ambidextrous enough that my left hand writing is totally legible. This may not be true for everyone, but it is a way to access a different part of your brain, is to use your non-dominant hand to write answers. And just asking what part of myself really has trouble receiving and letting that part come forward. That may take a moment. I like to ask first what that part needs to feel comfortable, that character, that version of me. Maybe it's me at a different age. Sometimes this ends up also being inner child work. And start with supporting that part before just diving in and asking questions. What does that part need? And then once you've created a safe space, which some people will imagine a living room or a place where they're very comfortable to sit with this version of themselves, you can ask questions such as, what do you like receiving? What is difficult to receive? And what would make it easier to receive more? You can come up with your own questions if you're doing the scenario in some form, but just starting to get some answers from your body, from your unconscious, which are the same thing. And another key part of this type of practice is finishing it safely. So again, if trauma is your nervous system being pushed farther than it can handle at that time, what we're doing with any practice like this is creating more of a sense of safety, which in the long run heals the nervous system. So if you're doing a practice where you're talking to another version of yourself, you've created a safe space, you've had the conversation, I always end with thanking that part of me, again, asking what they need, maybe providing that. I feel like a lot of my own parts work or sort of metaphorical work around this ends up just being hugging myself, giving myself affection and love and messages of enoughness, etc. Whatever that part of you needs. And then just reassuring that part, it's safe for us to receive more. It's safe for us to ask for what we need. It's safe for our needs to be met. And another related topic to me for this is one of the things my overall trauma experience left me with was a feeling that happiness was unsafe. And that was also partly because of my relationship to my own mental health and having been misdiagnosed. And I was really scared of happiness in certain ways. This is kind of a complex topic. But once I really started healing, one of the things I was processing with my therapist and teachers that I had was being traumatized. For me, having PTSD was a part of my identity. It was a part of how I related to the world. And I was worried about how I would interact and what my life would look like and if people would take me seriously if it went away. And I remember being really worried about that. And it's so interesting because when I did lose the PTSD diagnosis at the beginning of this year, when that came off my chart, which again, not that that's the be-all end-all, I still have some lingering elements, but I no longer have the life-altering day-to-day flashback type PTSD. Even though I had been scared of what it might mean if I lost that, I was just relieved when I found that out. Even though since then I have had the thought, I wonder if people will take me seriously talking about my childhood trauma if I don't have the day-to-day disabling effects anymore. And I bring that up because I feel like for me, that was about receiving my own healing, receiving the work that I'd put in for 15 years on my own mental health. Not that healing is the goal of that work, and not that anyone needs to reach any particular point. But part of the reason I keep bringing this up, my own losing the PTSD diagnosis, is because I was not seeing that modeled at all. I really was not seeing that as a thing that was possible. I didn't know it was possible. And I just want to share that it has been kind of a complex journey for me to learn how I'm interacting with that and how it fits into my life as a present but much smaller aspect of my experience. And so for me, as trauma has lessened, as it has become a little bit more background noise instead of the constant song playing that I can't turn off, it's been easier for me to ideate, to have ideas, to put those ideas into action, and then to receive from people as the fruits of that action. So for example, if I teach a course, I absolutely still have fears coming up and still have to process a lot of that. And I recognize how fucking difficult it was for me to do all three of those things and really bring them together, the ideas, the action, and the receiving at the same time in the same direction for a long period of time. I had plenty of ideas over the years, and I took a lot of actions, and I received some stuff, but they weren't all aligned in order in the same direction or channel or business or whatever. They weren't all together in a cyclical repeating space that could actually grow on itself. So I felt like I was doing a lot and it wasn't really building anything because I wasn't sticking with anything long enough to have that focus. And by the way, that's not a bad thing. If you're still in that phase where you're looking around and figuring out how to apply your energy, honestly, that process can be kind of fun. And there were elements of it that I really enjoyed. But it is one of the reasons that I ended up feeling behind in certain ways. And also on the receiving front, from a traditional job perspective, I was very routinely underpaid for my skills. And in at least one job, I found out I was explicitly being paid less than other people with less experience than me. So I knew I was not negotiating enough or whatever that was. Not that that's entirely on the individual, it's a systemic problem as well. So I'm not blaming myself for that. And at the same time, I look back and I think, well, if I'd really had a sense of what my value was in the marketplace or whatever, I would have negotiated differently, or I would have gone and found a different job. Again, complicated topic for me because I haven't worked full-time very much in my post-college life. But even in part-time jobs, same thing. I've just kind of taken what was there, and that feels very different than aligning my ideas, my action, and my ability to receive all in one direction to really keep building on itself, like this spiral staircase moving up kind of feeling. And money is an important topic to me because a lot of my communities specifically struggle with this, struggle to find and keep employment, to find and keep housing. And I personally know a lot of people really struggling in this area. And I want to be clear that even though I'm sharing individual things you can do for your own brain states to hopefully be able to do a little bit more, at the same time, this is part of a systemic problem. And especially if working is not an option for you and starting a business is not an option for you, I just want to be clear that everyone deserves housing, healthcare, food, basic human rights. We should not have to work for these. I absolutely believe in universal basic income and a variety of other social supports. And in the meantime, I want to help my communities do the best they can. And while you may not want to do exactly what I'm doing, I hope it's encouraging to know that I went from some years ago feeling like it would be impossible for me to have a full-time job to having a pretty great life now. And I've had some supports and privileges along the way, absolutely. And one of the things I'm committed to doing, besides donating a portion of my income, is creating free content that can help people, especially people who I feel like are at various points that I've been in my journey. I'm really, really committed to that. If you found this topic today useful and are interested in going deeper, I am considering putting together a workshop on this topic. I wanted to do the podcast first because I had some basic ideas I wanted to put out there, and I totally would be down to develop this and create some deeper exercises, etc. So if you are interested in this, please contact me and let me know. And if I get at least a few people interested, I will run a workshop on this topic about how trauma blocks money and how to work with your brain states, because I really just touched on some basic things today that are really simple, but in a longer setting, and if you could see me actually moving, I could give you some more somatic practices. And I'm very passionate about this topic because even though I am anti-capitalist, and I think it is possible for small businesses to be anti-capitalist, and I am personally trying to do that, I want everyone in my communities and I want everyone listening to be able to take care of themselves and their families. And it is okay to make money. It is safe to make money. It's safe to receive. And trauma brain can really get in the way of that sometimes. So I hope this was useful. And I just want to leave you with the idea that every little improvement in this area is useful. Take care, and I'll see you next Friday. Thanks for listening. If you know someone who would be helped by this podcast, please share it with them. And I'd love to hear your thoughts and suggestions at mattia@mattiamurray.com. That's MATTIA at MATTIAMAUREE.com. Thank you.